Welcome to What the Flick, everybody. I'm tired because I saw Noah last night.
You napped during Noah. I saw
No,
you.
you napped during Noah.
I
did not. That's horseshit.
I dozed.
It was a very late screening.
8 o'clock, 2.5 hours
late.
8 o'clock.
Yeah.
So Noah, Christy, I think people know the story, but what is the story?
God talks to Noah and said, there's going to be a flood. First there's going to be a fire, then it's going to be a flood. What was your joke?
Says,
there will be flood?
There will be flood.
I wish I thought of that. Anyway, so he builds a gigantic boat and puts like 2 of every creature in it and hopes to recreate the planet, but there's a problem of like boys and girls having to procreate and make more babies and whatnot. Take a look.
We have to save the innocent. Did you really think you could protect yourself from me? It's not protection from you. We kill Noah! We take the ark!
The choice was put in your hands for a reason.
You know, one of my big problems with any biblical story and with Hollywood's treatment of biblical stories is that, like, he doesn't talk to him, right? He sends a dream to him. He doesn't say anything.
Some light in the clouds.
It's his interpretation of the dream. I think it's safe to say that God did speak to him because some pretty magical things.
Were you looking for like the cutout God from the Monty Python?
Yeah.
Stop all that bawling.
Yeah, I always want to be like, Noah! Sorry, Noah! You know? But, like, and then he has to interpret it. And of course, at the end, he interprets it wildly wrong.
Right. And that's, I think that's the best.
Well, wildly, inhumanly. He interprets it in a hideous, awful,
which is not to say that
a crazy,
but it's
messy.
not wrong. A flood comes.
Wait a minute. I just want to.
Sorry,
You're saying that people wildly misinterpret the Bible in awful ways?
Or what they think that God is telling them? Yeah.
I am, and when smart Hollywood takes a hold of that, I want them to drill that point home, no matter how many people they
I think
offend.
the movie does drill that point
No,
home.
the best idea I think this movie has to offer is the notion that Noah thinks that God wants to wipe out humanity. That he's basically spared Noah and his family as zookeepers, basically, to tend to the animals, to shove them in the boat, to make the boat, put them in the
only
boat.
the animals are innocent.
And only the animals are innocent, and then basically that after the waters recede, that Noah and his children will die, and boom, that's it. No more humanity. That's Noah's interpretation of what God wants. And I was like, well, I haven't seen that before. Like that's they left that out of Sunday school.
Now,
you know?
I will say that this movie did inspire me to go and do some ancillary reading about it. And
So there's a
although
book?
now
There's an app. You put it on your phone.
I did on my iPad. I have the Bible on my iPad. That is not a story. That's not an interpretation that comes up through Genesis. But there are rabbinical teachings that talk about at one point Noah thought that's what God wanted, is that once the flood hits, we all need to die out too. So that's not something that
wasn't
the
made
writers
up out of.
wasn't made up. Now there's a lot of stuff in this movie that
Made
is
up
made
then,
up,
but it wasn't made up now.
But there's a lot of there's more, I think, that comes out of a tradition than I think a lot of people are going to realize, because I think a lot of people are going to go into this only knowing the Genesis story, which is pretty short.
Yeah.
You know, just kind of a few paragraphs like. God told Noah, everybody's wicked, build an ark, get the animals.
So this is
here
like
are the directions.
This is like Gunga Din. It's a poem. They had to turn it into a whole movie.
The Hobbit.
Yeah.
But it is also very much of a piece with everything else Darren Aronofsky has made. I mean, his movies are about people who go crazy because they're driven by their passions, right? Whether it's Black Swan, or whether it's Pi, or whether it's Requiem for a Dream, whether it's The Fountain, which is this is a lot like
There's
The
a lot
Fountain,
of Fountain
and not
going
in
here,
good
yeah.
ways. I'm not a fan of The Fountain, but there's a lot of that crazy magical realism.
But the thing
in
about The Fountain was at least that was pure full tilt boogie Darren Aronofsky. This movie feels like he had this crazy idea that he wanted to do one of his sort of obsessed characters, but make it Noah. And a studio saying, "Oh, we'll make that film. It's about a guy from the Bible. We'll sell that to the Bible people that want to come see this movie." And so it's this weird amalgam, shitty compromise of, you know, kind of crazy, go nuts, visionary art film, and let's get that Son of God money in, you know. And
we talked about that walking out of this afterward. It's like a Kirk Cameron movie with a better cast and a bigger budget.
Yeah.
It's very faith affirming.
But it's pardon the expression, it is neither fish nor fowl.
But it's an
No.
uncomfortable story. Like, I don't, you know, for audiences that are going in this expecting something like 10 Commandments with better special effects. That's not what they're getting at all here.
No.
This is, as some other people have talked about, like this is weird Old Testament stuff.
Yeah.
Like there's a lot of weirdness here that isn't far off. It may not be exactly what's in Genesis, but there's a lot of, like, as I mentioned, like as I've done some research over the course of the last couple hours.
Hence your groggy today.
Rabbinical scholar.
There's a lot of like kind of Talmudic tradition about some of the elements that are in here. So I think, coupled with, if you look at kind of some of that stuff that's in Pi, Aronofsky is, I think, really kind of exploring his Jewish background, and it's an interesting story.
There is a whiff of Jewish mysticism about some of this.
More than a whiff, I think.
Okay, a strong stench then. But we're kind of talking around it. What did you guys think of the movie? Because I was sort of unmoved by it. I thought there were moments of flash and interesting ideas and sort of visual spectacle, but it left me kind of cold, and I was not really into it.
It was super boring. It was really dull, and I know that's like maybe this is a little, perhaps I'm oversimplifying, but it was dull, man. It was filled with sameness, and completely without an ounce of humor, except for two little Anthony Hopkins moments that were very brief.
And some unintentional humor, I thought, also involving his scene with Emma Watson. But that's all I'll say.
Oh, all right.
Okay.
But
all right.
But I don't know. I was struggling to be moderately interested, aside from my hostility toward what I did not see as enough of a drop in the hammer on crazy thinking like this.
I'm torn about this movie. I found it to be kind of intellectually stimulating enough that it made me go and do some reading.
Yeah,
and,
clearly, yeah.
And it's something that I've been thinking about a lot of the elements of this. And I think that, a good Aronofsky film will make me think about obsession, and it'll make me think about the crazy characters and the depths at which they're kind of exploring whatever, be it Pi or Black Swan or Requiem for a Dream, and the addiction and the things that the characters can't pull themselves out of. The wrestler even.
I was waiting for somebody to say the wrestler.
This one, the emotion's not there. And that's the biggest problem, is at no point, as things start to go, when we get to the point at which Noah is really believing that his line needs to die out, that all humanity needs to die, and he's talking about committing murder to make that happen. I never felt the drama of that.
That's right. I needed to die, and that goes to why I thought it was dull. Was that you knew he wouldn't, because it's Russell Crowe.
Because here we are.
And you don't, because here we are. And that act that he was considering committing does not happen.
Yeah, the most emotional moment in the movie for me was the moment where they're in the Ark, spoiler alert, and the floods have hit, and it clearly hasn't hit the top of where, they've not reached high tide yet, because there's this mountain peak with a bunch of people screaming, and you can hear the screams inside the Ark. And there's a horror to that scene that I found really effective. But the rest of the movie kind of wants to present the Earth at the time as this post-apocalyptic wasteland that's caused by, over-industrialization. And they make elements of that, but I never felt the bleakness or terror that you feel in something like The Road. And it wants you to feel that way, but I never really felt that. Or when there's scenes of cannibalism, you don't really get how terrible
come
that
out of
is.
nowhere. Like, you didn't know when the Noah's family is on the road where they're going to higher ground or pre-flood, but you didn't know they were in grave danger. Like, I didn't know that there were bands of roving thugs who would come and kill them and take their belongings, and I guess
you just kind of thought that they were assholes, right? You didn't get like people were doing that because there's nothing left and they're going to eat you. Like that's where the movie doesn't do a good job of connecting the dots.
So, Christy, what was your takeaway?
I was into it for a while because it's incredibly beautiful, and we saw it on like the biggest screen you can find at Paramount. That big ass theater at Paramount, and it is stunningly beautiful. So Matthew Libatique, who shoots all his films, shot this. The effects are so cool, like in a very Terry very Gilliam-ish kind of way with the fallen angels who become these rock monsters, and like you can just sense every bit of their lumbering.
And that
It's
very bombastic
tactile.
score right off the bat.
And that is overbearing, but it makes sense with what we're talking about. Clint Mansell, who does all his music. So I liked it a lot, and I really wanted to like it as it kept going. But as you say, it's so fucking boring. Like it just drags. Like the things that should be building tension, like with all the animals coming. And again, it's cool looking. Like the snakes come in. It's like, holy shit, here come the snakes. And I'm like, ooh, like are the zebras going to eat other animals? Like what's going to happen to this idea?
There's that
They're not
one
gonna eat
moment
each other.
where there's like, you know, pioneer anesthesia where they're coming
They
up
all
with
go to sleep.
and I'm like, that was the
cool.
detail we needed.
But the only
That was
character
cool.
the only character that gets any laughs, or I felt like you only really feel any emotion around, really, is Methuselah, is Anthony Hopkins' character. Like there's the running gag about the berries and some other stuff that he does. It's like, okay, now I feel some emotions here. But the rest of it, Noah and his family, like, all right.
Emma Watson a little.
But here's the thing, though. Whatever your take on the Bible is, whether it's the book you live by, or you understand it's historically significant, the characters aren't rich in a dramatic sense in terms of they all kind of have one thing that they are, and they remain that. They're good or they're bad or they're loving
in the Bible.
In the Bible.
Yeah.
So it's hard to turn them into sort of characters in a 3-act thing,
Right, which means that if you do, you run the risk, as soon as you do, of massively offending a lot of people who take the Bible extremely seriously. And I think that this felt like punches were pulled in rounding out those characters a little bit. I also think that God is such a dick what he did to those fallen angels and rock monsters, turning them into rock monsters because they helped
all of humanity.
To all of humanity. It's like, Jesus, what a terrible person, a terrible entity, a terrible being. And then, moderate spoiler alert, I won't give the full context, but it's weird that the end of the movie just has two guys essentially waiting around for their nieces to grow up so they can fuck them.
It's kind of like the end of Breaking Dawn Part 1.
Yeah,
No,
right,
but it's interesting you bring that up because there's a lot of elements in the Old Testament. Like this movie flirts with the idea of that vengeful Old Testament, really scary God, and it kind of pulls its punch by the end. And that I think took some of the drama away from it. Yeah. I wanted more here. I'm intrigued by the movie and probably more than I really should be, but...
It's very canny, though, because it made you intrigued. It will totally appeal to very conservative Christian moviegoers who don't get a big movie like this. They get
I'm not sure it
little
will.
one-offs.
I don't know that
I
it
think
will.
it will, because, yes, Noah does horrible things, and yes, he's an anti-hero or whatever, but ultimately, he believed, and his faith is rewarded, and his vision came true.
He's a vegetarian environmentalist.
Yeah, I think this might be
but he believed in God, no matter what everyone said around him. He believed, and it ends with a fucking rainbow.
I kind of feel like,
it's happy.
I kind of feel like this is maybe too art house for the people who flocked to see God's Not Dead last weekend, and it's too God's Not Dead for Aronofsky's fans. If you were thinking, oh wow, the reunion of the star and director of Requiem for a Dream, like this is not really the movie you were.
Not major stars are in this. It's Russell Crowe, it's Jennifer Connelly, it's Anthony Hopkins.
But this is not a comfortable Bible story. Again, like this is not.
Yeah.
You're not getting anything you expect. I mean, yeah, it does follow yes, there's a flood, and yes, Noah and the animals survive. But outside of that, this is a really challenging story, and some of the elements, not just the pro-environmental message, but the very, very pointed evolution sequence,
Yeah.
and
It's really
all of the kind of rhetoric about dominionism that's put in the mouth of the villain. I think that's going to alienate a lot of people.
It might. I thought the evolution thing was it was there, and I'm glad it was there, but it was super quick.
But Ray Winstone, who was evil incarnate in this movie, has some quote, and I wrote it down. It was like, "Man is not ruled by the heavens; man is ruled by free will." And he's the evil person in the movie saying that.
Right.
So
true.
you know where we stand here.
That's right,
So.
All right, let's give numbers. I gave it a 4.
I give it a 5 because again, I think everything about this movie is sort of split down the middle in terms of whose ideas are in there and whether or not it works.
5.8 for me. I'm very mixed on it, as you are too.
Yeah, I am too. I mean, this movie is kind of a hot mess, but it's really intriguing, and I give it a 6. I think
Where's it
ultimately
at?
I'm glad I saw it. It's in the 70s right now on the tomato meter. I think it's going to drop some. I think it's going to end up splitting a lot of people.
Yeah, well, we're all not that far off on it in the end, actually. So it's at 5.2 for us, for Noah.